Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Newsbrowse News broadcast. Global long-term interest rates, including those in the United States and Japan, are rapidly climbing to record levels. According to GG Press, this surge is attributed to several factors: ongoing uncertainty regarding the resolution of the U.S.-Iran conflict, persistent high crude oil prices fueling increased inflation concerns, and the growing anticipation of interest rate hikes by central banks worldwide. In addition, fiscal anxieties are specifically cited as a contributing factor for Japan and the United Kingdom. The benchmark 10-year U.S. Treasury yield recently exceeded 4.6% for the first time in a year, while Japan's 10-year bond yield reached 2.73%, a 29-year high, and its 30-year yield surpassed 4% for the first time since its issuance in 1999. The UK's 10-year yield also hit an 18-year high. This upward pressure on rates led to a global stock market decline, though markets remain relatively high due to AI growth expectations. With crude oil, WTI, trading around $100 per barrel amidst concerns over the Strait of Hormuz and inflation rates expanding, central banks are reconsidering their dovish stances. Expectations for the Federal Reserve's rate cuts this year have dwindled to near zero, with rate hike probabilities rising, and the European Central Bank is also expected to potentially raise rates in June. According to Sasebo, Japan's Kyodo News reported on the leaked draft of the Japan Ministry of Defense's 2026 Defense White Paper. The draft expresses strong vigilance against China's increasingly frequent military activities around Japan, especially on its Pacific side. It specifically mentions the frequent military exercises conducted by the Chinese People's Liberation Army near Taiwan, and advocates for cooperation with the United States and other allies to counter China. The report criticizes China for significantly increasing its defense spending without transparency. The draft details several incidents, including the unprecedented deployment of 2 Chinese aircraft carriers in the Pacific last June, abnormally close encounters between Chinese and Japanese aircraft, and a radar illumination incident involving a Chinese aircraft and a Japan Self-Defense Force plane southeast of Okinawa. The white paper assesses that PLA exercises near Taiwan aim to normalize activities and improve operational capabilities. Furthermore, it expresses serious concern over expanding military cooperation between China and Russia, citing joint bomber flights. Regarding North Korea, the draft warns of a more serious and imminent threat due to its rapid missile development and potential military enhancement through cooperation with Russia. Lessons from the Russia-Ukraine war are also included, detailing warfare evolution and the need for sufficient arms stockpiles and operational capabilities in prolonged conflicts. According to the Epoch Times, U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright announced on Friday, May 15, 2026, that China is set to increase its crude oil imports from the United States. Wright emphasized that the world's 2 largest economies are natural trade partners in the energy sector, with China being the largest oil importer and the U.S. the largest producer. This development comes as Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz has disrupted oil exports from the Persian Gulf for weeks. President Trump, returning from a trip to China, confirmed in a Fox News interview that China had agreed to purchase more U.S. oil, specifying shipments from Texas, Louisiana, and Alaska. Secretary Wright also stated that the importance of the Strait of Hormuz would diminish in the future as Gulf nations plan to build more pipelines to bypass it, regardless of the ongoing conflict. According to Sasebo, Chinese President Xi Jinping proposed establishing a constructive, strategic, stable relationship with U.S. President Donald Trump during their meeting as a future direction for bilateral ties. However, This specific phrasing was notably absent from official U.S. statements or remarks by American officials. Experts cited by Voice of America suggest Washington's reluctance stems from a desire to avoid being constrained by any underlying principles China might attach to such a broad term. While China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi affirmed leaders agreed on this positioning, the U.S. official account focused on tangible outcomes like economic cooperation, combating fentanyl, and consensus on Iran. Patricia Kim of the Brookings Institution explained that constructive and strategic stability are existing American political terms without negative connotations, likely influencing Beijing's choice. The article highlights differing interpretations. For the U.S., strategic stability is a Cold War term about nuclear competition, viewed as an engineering problem. For China, it's a philosophical concept about interaction rhythm. Former White House NSC China Director Dennis Wilder dismissed China's slogan as meaningless, stating the U.S. prioritizes practical matters over abstract principles. Adopting Beijing's preferred terminology, According to a Liberty Times report, Chinese government-controlled fishing fleets have recently expanded their operations eastward into the Yellow Sea, at one point approaching within approximately 241 kilometers of Japan's Sasebo base, which hosts a U.S. Navy installation. Geospatial data from IngenieSpace indicates around 200 Chinese fishing vessels operating intensely near the eastern edge of the overlapping South Korea-China exclusive economic zone, with Thatso adjacent Wang suggesting these dual-use vessels are employed in irregular warfare to assert control. The article highlights China's consistent deployment of fishing boats and Coast Guard vessels in disputed Asian waters over the past decade. Recent activities include over 600 Chinese fishing boats forming a straight line in the East China Sea for over 18 hours in April, and increased Coast Guard presence around the Diaoyutai, Senkaku Islands, and Scarborough Shoal. Furthermore, China has undertaken what is potentially its largest land reclamation project to date at Antelope Reef in the Parasol Islands, deploying maritime militia and dredgers while paramilitary vessels block Vietnamese ships. With 20 outposts in the Parasols and 7 in the Spratlys, China is steadily expanding its maritime presence. Analysts from the CESAs suggest that Beijing is adept at leveraging gray zone tactics to increase military and maritime pressure on the U.S. and its allies in the West Pacific. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.